Hello and welcome back to the Life School Podcast. This is your host, Jordan, and we are talking Tier 2 interventions today. In fact, we're going to give you 6 tiered interventions you can use in your school this fall. But before we start, let's talk a little bit about what are interventions. Well, what we're talking about interventions, we're talking about ways you can support at-risk students by developing the skills they need to succeed in class. So these are widely used in schools to develop and reinforce those skills. They can be both academic and behavioral. The most commonly used school-wide intervention framework would be PBIS or MTSS. But before we go any further, to make sure we're all on the same page, let's talk about PBIS really quickly. PBIS is a tiered system targeting student behavior, and it's often depicted as a pyramid. It goes from bottom up, Tier 1, 2, and 3. At the base, you have Tier 1. Tier 1 includes all learners, represents basic student behavior expectations and skills. These are the things you expect all students to do. All right. And your middle tier is Tier 2. This is where you include your interventions, your strategies to support some learners labeled at risk from time to time. Tier 2 is going to focus on developing skills that students need to succeed in class that maybe they're falling a little short with. And Tier 3 is going to be the things you need when you're going to have required intensive individualized support to ensure success. Today, we're talking Tier 2, and really we're going to give you 6 ideas that you can use in your school this fall. So Tier 2 behavior interventions, they offer support for those students who are not successful with your Tier 1 supports alone. So you present your expectations to the entire school. You put up posters and all the things. You use the common verbiage you use around the school. These are the kids that still are going to struggle to meet those goals. So they need a little bit more support and they need some intervention. So these are just a little bit more focused than the things you would try at Tier 1 because it's not going to be a blanket approach. But it's also less intensive than something that would be in Tier 3. So we're thinking things that can be applied to small groups of students and include practices like social skills groups, restorative justice circles, or maybe even some academic support like with an interventionist. So according to the Center on PBS, there are 6 key practices for Tier 2 behavior intervention. So here we go. Let's talk through the 6, then I'll give you some examples of some you can use. 1, increased instruction and practice with self-regulation and social skills. 2, increased adult supervision. 3, increased opportunity for positive behavior supports. Okay, so that's when you identifying a behavior goal for a student and providing positive reinforcement for meeting those goals. Increase pre-corrections. That's probably my favorite of these. When you know there's going to be a problem, this is how you address it before it becomes a problem. Now that's pre-correction. So I was a science teacher, and I always like giving this example when I'm talking about pre-corrections. If I'm going to have a lab and it's going to have a lot of supplies that could also be used as disruptors, or in the case of I was a physics teacher, to be more precise, we use meter sticks a lot in physics. Meter sticks with 9th and 10th graders can also be used as swords or fake lightsabers and such. So my pre-correction when using meter sticks would always be, all right, attention class, here's a meter stick. This is for measuring. This is for telling the distance between objects. It is to help you find this measurement to be used in this formula. It is not to be used as a weapon. It is not to be used as a cane or a spear or anything above. So that would be an example of pre-correction. I've already kind of addressed what could happen. I've even made light of it. And it's less likely to happen as a result of me addressing it. Okay, the 5th one. Increase focus on possible function of the problem behavior. So this is where you're looking at, okay, what are the root causes of these things? If every time we dismiss for lunch, there's an issue between these 2 hallways, we need to probably have more supervision there, or we need to change the lunch schedule. That's how you would address that. That could be an intervention potentially. Then number 6, increase access to academic supports, which obviously could solve a ton of these issues. But let's talk about specific interventions. Number one is check in, check out. And we've got a whole podcast on check in, check out before. I will link that in the show notes. I won't go into it in detail here because we've got a whole podcast on it and some articles and stuff I will include in the description. But check in, check out is a great tier 2 example. It's also one that works really well with Live School for those out there who are Live School customers. Number 2, a home and school plan. This is a communication of behaviors, good, bad, and ugly, as one could call it. But it's necessary to create that supportive learning environment, that communication and that being on the same team with the parents and the guardians at home. So when students have behavior needs in school, parents, they're often brought in to identify if they observe similar behaviors at home. When the school team shares their observations and the replacement behaviors being taught, a home and school plan can increase the likelihood of positive behaviors in both places. This is a positive for the family as well as the school, and 100% a positive for the student. But the parents can help by identifying rewards and consequences that we followed up with at home based on the child's in-school behavior. So it works both ways. The home and school plan shows alignment between teachers and parents, and it helps reinforce the importance of acting appropriately throughout the school day, and probably going to make their experience at home better as well. Number 3, take a break. This is probably the easiest one. We could all use a break from time to time, right? Often disruptive behaviors occur in class due to the lack of self-regulation. At times, students are overstimulated or they're bored, act out in a way to gain attention. So take a break intervention in Tier 2 aims to mitigate this by scheduling those breaks. Your MTSS team develops approved mechanisms or PBS for students to decompress, pause, regulate their emotions and behaviors to reduce class disruption. Your team can also conceive of signals for teachers to use that signal the student need to apply this intervention. Some teachers even go as far as to having like a calming place in the room, maybe some sensory type things in a back corner. In the school I recently worked at, we even had a calming room in the building that teachers could call, like, listen, I know I just want to check to see if the room's available. I have a student who could definitely use it. They're fine now, but they've communicated to me that they could take a break. That'd be a great time. So an administrator or a counselor walks down, takes the student to the room, and then they just monitor, and then they let them relax for 5-10 minutes, and then they take them back. No actual no discipline issue has taken place. They're working up to one, and it has been identified, and they know that there's a way not for that to happen. And this is a good way to do that. All right, number 4, a self-monitoring form. This can be useful as a Tier 2 intervention to identify how students perceive their own behavior. So with this intervention, students are instructed to complete their form to provide a snapshot of their class performance. It could have 3 to 4 items such as participation, work completion, on-task behavior, being prepared for class, those kind of things that are universal, that needs to happen every time. And they give their own input and then check in with the teachers to see if they have the same observations. So that opens a dialogue between the student and the teacher that they can see their on-task and off-task behaviors, and then they start self-correcting those. Now, I would add that the key to this, that the student is on board with this and they agree to cooperate with this, and as also that we are as discreet as possible as staff with this, so the student doesn't feel like they're being singled out, and none of their classmates are saying are asking them, what is that form you're filling out? So they can do this as discreet as possible. And maybe it's a notebook they carry. Maybe the teacher knows when to go check that notebook, those kind of things. Or maybe they just call them up to their desk. But discretion is key here, because you don't want the student to feel like they're under a microscope when they're identifying their own behaviors, because then you're just going to create more behaviors. Number 5, targeted social skills instruction. This is a coordinated effort, and this is coordinated effort to increase the likelihood of positive behaviors. So you're looking at social skills like interpersonal communication, self-discipline, self-management, problem solving. Social skills instruction both equips those students with new behavioral skills as well as strategy to replace problem behaviors. So when you're doing this, you're going to focus on one behavior at a time. And You're going to identify what behavior is the biggest roadblock to achieving success for that student. Now, a very common one might be that could be off-task behavior or tardiness. Those things lead to other things, or maybe it is being appropriate with technology use in the classroom. Maybe their phone is a source of a lot of angst and turmoil in the room. I can feel you nodding your head on the other side of your headphones with that one. But if the cell phone is the biggest issue, that could be the targeted social skills instruction, is appropriate use of the cell phone. When's appropriate to have it out? When's it not? Et cetera, et cetera. But talk to the students ahead of time. That's one that can definitely be useful. And number 6, restorative justice circles. So this is an alternative approach to suspension and punishment for behavior. It can aid tier 2 students and even tier 3. But what restorative practice strives to do is improve behavior and the harm it does by building empathy, responsibility, and restitution in a way. So these are a specific intervention to facilitate with a small group, and it can look similar to like peer-mediated meetings where students meet to talk through conflicts. But the topics discussed can include behavior, bullying. They can give the offender the opportunity to understand the harm, the words and actions that they are taking and have on others, and then take responsibility for it. But that's the idea is with restorative justice circles is to take responsibility and share empathy with what my actions caused this, who did it affect? This is how I make it right. Now, my suggestion with this, you can use this even in classrooms, really, as this doesn't even have to be a tier 2 intervention. This could be, part of your classroom management strategy if you got really good with it. But from my experience using these, it's best if you have some low-level issues to work up with first, or even like just the structure as a get to know you, like we're just talking kind of procedure before you go into, all right, this happened, we're going to circle up and talk about it, just because you're asking for you're asking for kind of disaster if you do it that way. So build up the process before you try to use that as an intervention. That would be my suggestion on restorative circles. They're awesome. But kind of use them as a get to know you. This is a way we communicate problems in our classroom. And then when you have the problem, then they're useful. All right, guys, that is 6 tier 2 interventions you can use this fall. I hope you found something there that will help you improve behavior in your school. And if you like what you're hearing, go ahead and check us out on all of our social channels. We're on Instagram, we're on TikTok, we're on YouTube, we're on Twitter. And now we're on Threads, actually. So come check us out. And if you like the pod, leave us a review and share it with a colleague. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.